Hi, I'm Jason Waggenspack, the head of possibilities at the Ranch Film Studios.
Cool. And we're rolling. All right. So how you been? How you been doing through the COVID-19?
Well, just like everybody else, working on our home projects.
Yeah.
Making sure that our backyards look nice and ready to go to have people over when we can have them over.
Right. How's work been?
Work's been good.
Yeah.
Obviously, things are on hold right now.
Yeah.
The film industry hasn't really gotten back up or gotten the green light yet.
Of course.
But things are moving. We're figuring out the guidances and procedures by which we will move into this new era of how we're going to accomplish filmmaking. So.
Right.
But it's around the corner that we'll be getting started soon.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I heard. I was talking to Justin yesterday, and he kind of gave me some hints as to potential dates when people would start coming in and doing stuff here in this building. I know you're starting at the other building a little earlier.
Yeah, that's correct. Offices are obviously going to be easier to open up before stages and on-location filming. Those are the more difficult places to do it because you have much larger concentration of people in them. So, yeah, we'll start prepping probably the end of June. You'll start seeing a lot more people come around the offices. Hopefully by the end of July, we'll be filming, but we're waiting on those answers now.
Cool. I know when this whole thing first started, you were actually kind of saying that it would potentially take a bit longer. I know the initial predictions were like August, maybe September.
Yep.
So this is much better.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So for starters, what got you into the film industry?
Well, before I lost all my hair, I thought I was a pretty good-looking guy, so I started doing some editorial modeling work. Imagine that. Don't try to look for the photographs, please. Those are embarrassing. I actually moved to New York to get into theatrical performing. So I was a theater actor. While I was there, I've met a few people that were trying to make independent films, little short student films, and so I started becoming an actor with them and started enjoying that process a lot more. I didn't like the way I saw myself on camera, so I found a way to control the story in a way that I was so resonated with getting into the industry in the first place, which is just telling great stories and finding emotional moments. And so in doing that, I found the love for editing while I was in New York. And I said, I love this filmmaking process. Let me just maybe I can go back home, get into film school for much cheaper than I can here in New York,
right,
or go to LA where it was obviously much more expensive. And I found UNO was a good program. And so I went to UNO and studied filmmaking there. And I started managing projects. So I became the producer, if you will,
right,
which is not today, in my terms, is not what you were doing on a student film. You were mostly managing the project. Anyway, so I started taking on several projects, and I got to be pretty good at them. So everybody was asking me to take on their projects outside of school, and so I began a little company called Neutral Ground Films, where we would develop intellectual property, and from there, that parlayed me into finding work in the film industry as a location manager. And I became a location manager on, little projects like Red with Bruce Willis and Morgan Freeman, onto the Twilight Saga, Breaking Dawn in Baton Rouge, where I was on for, I felt like, half of my life. I scouted that movie for 8 months looking for the perfect pine forest in the middle of nowhere, which I found, by the way. But there was an issue with the fact that they wanted to try and make it a snowy open field in the middle of January in Louisiana. And I was like, hold on, there's a lot of rain that's going to be going on here. So what is it you're using for snow? And they're like, oh, it's this paper mache. Right. I was like, this is going to be a mess. This is going to be horrible. So location managing brought me into needing to find, sort of unusual spaces, if you will, to build sets inside of, because we didn't have a lot of infrastructure in the state of Louisiana back then.
Right.
And one movie called Terminator Genesis brought me here to Chalmette with an old Lowe's that had been closed down for about 4 or 5 years, and it was a perfect venue for that movie. And I looked at it and I said, man, I don't think I want to give this up. This is something I could put more movies in. And so
that's the beginning of the ranch.
That's the beginning of the ranch.
Right on.
That's kind of how it all got started.
I think when I first moved down here, it was around 2013, and that's when I would hear the echoes of Hollywood South. But then I know I've dated a few actresses in the city, and they had there was a big reckoning, I guess is what I've been the rumors said around 2015. Do you know? I mean, obviously, you know about that area, or you know about that time. Can you tell me about what was going on around then?
So there's a history here in the state of Louisiana with tax credits. They actually began in 1992. We gave a little 10% tax credit way back in the day to try to lure commercials and small films, or films that we saw that would be a market value to the state. And nobody really took advantage of it because it wasn't a thing anywhere in the U.S. at that time. So in 2001, they actually decided to pass a larger incentive program to really draw more attention to movies, because they saw Steel Magnolias had done so well for the state of Louisiana before that time. And so we began to uptick the giveaway and the opportunities for more spending and more cash on, if you will, rebates for people that were coming to spend in the state of Louisiana. And so as that grew and grew, we began to obviously really strengthen that program more and more. And then you saw states start to compete with us on giving out more and more money all around, because they noticed the massive benefit of not only the jobs, but the amount of creativity that's here, a diverse economy that's here, and obviously the opportunity for marketing, so that, hey, this movie was shot in our state, or potentially there would be a movie that would be derived or practically located and written about a parish or a town or a state. It obviously brings more attention to it. And so we began building that business to where we were having almost $1 billion, $1 billion with a B,
right,
dollars worth of spending in our state on an annual basis. That's massive. I mean,
tons of jobs,
tons and tons of money spent. And you were talking about tens of thousands of jobs on an annual basis that's coming from the film industry. And so as we hit our peak in 2013, 2014, Bobby Jindal was the governor at that time, and that's a name I hear a lot of. Yeah, he had done some things outside of the film industry that really kind of put a big toll on his term in office, with a lot of giveaways. I mean, it wasn't just us; it was the oil and gas industry. It was it was the natural gas. It was construction. It was a lot of things that he was giving a lot of money away to, and he didn't financially look at it in the right aspect. And so at the end of his term, he was trying to save as much grace as he could, and just started slashing a bunch of these incentive programs. The state needed to as well, because they couldn't meet their fiscal budget. And so, unfortunately, what happens in the state of Louisiana is that there's only a certain amount of money that you can take to reduce your budget in the state. Most of it is governed in the Constitution that says, here's your set $25 billion budget. You have to stick to it. And then there's this other set $1 billion that we can go play around with. And film and television, healthcare, and education are the top three that sit in that bucket.
Yeah.
Oil and gas is a whole nother one that they give incentives to. And then there's other individual tax programs. And so you have to understand that there's $7 billion in tax, in incentives, rebates, and giveaways that the state does every year on an annual basis. And the film industry at that time was only given $200 million annually giving away in incentives. So we were 2% of the problem.
Right.
And so you look at that and you're like, wow, how do you come and whack our program and not really look at all the other ones to come whack? Because we're the easy fish. We're the ones that, the stars are shining bright in front of you. We're more recognizable. We're easy to pick on. We're clickbait whenever we do a story about it. Oh, Tom Cruise came, but we're going to slash his budget because, and so that's what became the storyline. Yep. Really, it just came down to a budget deficit that we needed to work out. And fortunately, I became part of an association called Louisiana Film and Entertainment Association when I started the ranch. That was the largest lobbying effort for our incentive program, or for the film industry as a whole, to really secure those incentives. And we went in and we really negotiated with legislators to say, listen, don't cut our program, but we're willing to work with you. Please, let's just find a way to minimize the impact so that we can do our part to the state, but also allow for our jobs to be secure and for, film and television to continue. And we did. We did a good job with that. But what they did is they put a cap on our tax credits.
Right.
And when they did the cap, they actually added a freeze on the buyback, which means if you know anything about tax credits, you're usually selling them back to the state for a certain amount on the dollar, usually between 85 cents and 90 cents on the dollar, or you're selling them to a person who's holding tax liability, so a large company that needs the tax write-off, you're selling to them for a higher value at 91 or 92%. When they froze that buyback where the state wouldn't buy them back at 85 cents, then the value of the tax credit just hit the floor.
Right.
So there's no value anymore.
Right.
So if they're not using them and they don't have any backing by a bank or by the state, there's no value. So they were only buying them at 50 and 60 cents on the dollar. So essentially, our tax incentive program that was at 30% at the time is now at 25%. So I'm sorry I'm getting really deep into this, but hopefully this is
fascinating.
Hopefully you're understanding all this. But so if for every dollar that the film industry spends, they get currently 25 cents back in a tax rebate, okay? And so, first of all, they have to spend that money here.
Right.
All of that money has to be properly audited by a state auditor, and then they get it probably 12 to 18 months after they've finished actually spending in the state of Louisiana is when they get that back. So what's interesting about it is we're not giving money to a company or a program to come here. We're giving it to somebody who's spending that money here. So they're coming here, $100 million movies spending, let's say, 60% of their overall budget. So they're spending $60 million here, and then they're getting their incentive program at $15 to $20 million clip at the end of it. So understand how that process works as well. So when they froze that buyback in 2015 and plummeted the market of the tax credits, there was no value, so therefore movies weren't incentivized to want to come here.
Right.
They looked at us and said, well, you need to go figure out your program, or from what the majority of them were looking at, we're saying, oh, well, they don't have a program anymore. There all of a sudden was this noise and bad messaging that stated, that the film industry was gone in the state.
Right.
So we had to go out and rebrand and re-educate LA and New York to say, hey guys, no, the incentive program's still here. Here's what's happened.
It's a little different.
It's a little different, but we're now out of it because it was a 12-month freeze. And so please come back to Louisiana and let's start working again. And we did. In 2016, it picked right back up. We had a 10-month lull. We had Deepwater Horizon was our first major client that built, the massive oil rig out in the middle of our parking lots and the derrick of the oil rig, and had built 16 interior sets inside of all of our spaces. It was remarkable what they did. And then when they got finished, we didn't have any clients for almost 10 months because of that freeze in the buyback. So we were living off of the revenues that were generated, going, please, let's get out of this lull. And then our next client was a movie called Underwater from 20th Century Fox, who came in and saved our lives. And fortunately that ended up happening because after that we have been jam-packed ever since and just continuously had a great run of programs that have been inside the space. And now the film industry and the incentive program are much stronger. We have really gone on.
It really seems that way, yeah.
We have changed it. We sat in with legislators again when we came back around the fiscal session and said, look, we understand we have a cap. We're okay with this cap. But what we want to do is we want to incentivize filmmakers and content creators from outside the state to want to come here for longer term. So how can we do that? And so television, we recognize, was spending more money, hiring more locals.
For a longer amount of time.
How do we keep them here? And so what we did is we offered them a 5-year guarantee that says no matter what happens in the legislation, if you come here in year one, let's say right now, 2020, you will have a guarantee tax credit incentive program guaranteed to you for 5 years. So, the first that had just finished about a year ago, if they were to continue going down here, they would enable to to keep coming back and continuing season after season and not have to worry about their tax credits ever being jeopardized by the state.
Right.
So it obviously incentivizes them to want to come here, knowing that they get that, and it incentivizes us as a facility to want to continue to invest in our real estate and our brick and mortar, and hopefully more brick and mortar, so that we can continue building the film industry in the state.
Right.
So,
I mean, it totally makes sense. It seems like, back when the legislation first changed, back when, Jindal messed with it.
Yes.
It sounds like he added an aspect of distrust in the
it did.
like what's the word I'm looking for? Movement. People are scared of movement. People are scared of not being able to.
Of course. There's no stability in the program.
Yeah.
You're right. And so it became unstable, if you will, if the word maybe you're looking at. Yeah.
That's it.
And you're absolutely right with the distrust, because every time we would go to Los Angeles and go meet with the heads of studios, again, there was this misunderstanding of what was actually going on.
Right.
There was nobody at the Economic Development Office, unfortunately, doing the proper marketing at the time. And I'll come out and say it, like they would go and meet with folks, but there was no continued, renewed effort to say, no, here's the program. We apologize that this had to happen. It's something we had to do, but this is what it is moving forward. Please understand that the stability is there. And so there was some rocky times for a little while there until we really got it back on track at the next fiscal session in 2017 and really set the record straight. And then in 2019, we were never brought up in session at all. So we never came into any play in 2019. We hope to do the same in 2021.
Right.
Because guess what? In 2017, the legislators that were coming out against us in 15 and talking about these such negative things, at the end of it all, after they voted, they stood up and applauded us to say they came and put their 5 pounds of flesh. I'm quoting somebody from the state legislature, said they came and put their 5 pounds of flesh on the table and said, let's chop this up and make it best for the state and best for our industry so that we can continue having and growing a strong program. And they all applauded us for coming to do that, because they looked around and said, who else has come to us and tried to do that? Nobody. They all just usually shout about what they want and never say what it is that, hey, how can we work this out and figure out a way to make this work? And right now it's working really well.
Yeah,
except for COVID, we were as busy as we've ever been.
Yeah.
We were really moving in a great direction. And, I think after COVID, it's going to be unbelievably nuts, because there's such a demand for content.
Oh, yeah.
And there is this 3-month lull of no productions that have been going on, and possibly 4 or 5 before we actually get started again, that it's just going to be a juggernaut. I don't know. I'm going to need to start building spaces as much as I can, as quickly as I can, I should say. So it's going to be fun. So we'll see.
Great.
Yeah.
So throughout the time of the Ranch Studios being a thing, what sorts of movies have you seen come in?
To our spaces, we've had... So let me see if I can run through a couple of lists of movies. We've had small independent films that have come through, like The Money Plane, and we did Cutthroat City. But we've also done major motion pictures like The First with Sean Penn, that was a Hulu space exploration project that only went through 1 season, unfortunately. We had The Lovebirds that just recently came out on Netflix. We had The Dirt, which was the Motley Crue biopic, was all filmed at our facility. Yeah. We had Bill and Ted, the new Bill and Ted Face the Music, which just dropped their trailer last week, which looks really exciting. They came here. There's a big interstate scene in the trailer, and they built that in our parking lot, and I was amazed by what they did. So I applaud them and really look forward to seeing that come out. But we've had television series that actually haven't come out yet. We've had Tell Me Your Secrets was the name of that TV series, TNT. I hope to see that coming out. And then we have a CBS project right now, and we have a Disney project right now, which I'll reveal once they decide to launch.
Right.
But at the moment, we're going to keep it.
I was going to say, is there any special underground content you can
there's always I can't really share that type of stuff, mostly because it's still ongoing, and so I have some NDAs, but
there's a lot of
there'll be some information coming out this fall, let's put it that way.
Cool.
So yeah,
right on. So all right, so if a company wanted to produce a movie here, be it a major film company or an indie film, how would they best start that process if they wanted to come to Chalmette to St. Bernard area in particular?
Good question. I'm an indie producer as well.
Right.
I've always been a storyteller. That was the passion and reason why I got into this industry, obviously with the acting, but through the editing, wanting to be able to control the story. And through Neutral Ground Films, my original company I started, which now has been enveloped into the ranch. So Neutral Ground Films has become a part of the ranch because our long-term vision is to move into content. We would love to produce content and hopefully content large enough to fill our own boxes. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. And so in that aspect, we produced the True Don Quixote here in St. Bernard Parish. Pretty much 99.9% of it was shot here. We love filming here. There's a lot of opportunities in this parish. But if you are a producer wanting to, come in and produce this area, I think you have a lot of assets that are available for you. You have a lot of open door policy. You have a lot of friends with government. Government's very friendly here with filming. They really appreciate the creatives that are coming to this area. You also have assets with students. You have a lot of students at Nunez and Chalmette High. We took on a lot of interns during the True Don Quixote. And so you have access to that here. You have access to rural land that you don't have, obviously, in New Orleans. So you have a lot of that opportunity out here as well. And then things are a little cheaper out here. They're not as expensive as it is going into the city. So there's a cost perspective there as well. Really what it comes down to with indie filmmaking is just finding a good crew and finding a good base, people that are going to be committed to your project. And in coming to, St. Bernard Parish, I think you're going to be welcome with open arms, I should say. I think it becomes easier for you to accomplish your task in St. Bernard than it does in some other areas in the state. So that's why I put my movie here, and now I want to continue making my movies here, obviously, as well. So.
Yeah. Well, then, speaking of Neutral Ground, I know you've got your own podcast. Is that still rolling along? On
the Neutral Ground, yes. We pushed a little pause. We have 2 more episodes that we're going to finish editing. We pushed a bit of a pause because, as you can hear with my voice already, I'm constantly on the phone and on Zoom.
Right.
Just trying to prep for things, not only with our production company, but with the ranch. We have a lot going on. So it would have been best if I probably kept it up, but unfortunately I didn't have the time or wherewithal, nor resources. I mean, honestly, what it really hit us all, interestingly enough, is that, we all didn't realize we were all going to go to our own computers and sit on Zoom and Google and FaceTime and figuring out new ways to communicate. So I wasn't prepared for that while I was still trying to build and prepare for the inevitable of how long we were going to be sitting through this thing.
Right.
But there's still a lot of subjects there is what I'm getting at. So I would love to begin that again. I need to figure out what that format is, and hopefully we'll get it started here this fall.
Yeah.
So.
No, I really enjoyed it. I've been watching through them. I know Miss Victoria was.
She's great.
Yeah, she invited me to watch it, and I have always been kind of interested in the film industry, and so that was a good way to learn about the local film industry in particular, and a lot of these indie films that are coming out and have come out, and the people that have been putting these together.
Well, that was the reason I started it. Yep. The whole reason was I would get calls constantly from people saying, hey, I've got my son wants to be an actor, or I've got a friend of mine who wants to get into the film industry, or somebody's really interested to be a stuntman, and they would constantly ask me, for advice. How can I help this person or myself get to where I want to be in your industry? And I didn't always have an answer. And so I would have either broad answers, or I'd send them to a particular resource, web page to go to, or potentially, link them up with a friend that I knew could, maybe get them a job or find a way for them to help out. So I said, why don't I invite those people into an open forum and let's just talk about it, And so that's what the first one was. We ended up having a casting director and an actor who has been working in the industry for 15 years in New Orleans. And I basically said, hey, I'm Jason. I just came in off the street and I looked at you and said, man, that looks like fun. I think I want to be an actor. How do I do that? And we discussed it. And so we had an hour-long show on how it is that we would go about getting headshots and getting in with groups and taking classes. And then a casting director here saying, this is what I'm looking for and this is what I need to move you into a position to get cast and hired onto a show. And so the same thing, we brought in the union and discussed, how the union works and how it is you get a union job versus just getting hired as a production assistant or an assistant on the show. And then we, again, got broader topics. We brought in legal teams to talk about how to copyright yourself properly and get the, the proper LLC set up. Because essentially at the end of the day, you're building a small business.
Right.
Every independent film is a little small business that you're honing and crafting and molding, and then that's what you're setting up. And so that's where I see that there's a major advantage here in this parish is you have Nunez Community College.
Right.
And Nunez has a curriculum on entrepreneurship. And so with this entrepreneurship program, I think there's a real asset there for you to find some young potential producers who would understand how to set things up properly, manage a business properly, and be able to help in the filmmaker's aspect of wanting to build not only a film, but potentially a production company.
Right.
You have these creatives that come in, there's this left versus right brain sort of, theories that come into play. Yeah. And so I've had to deal with it all my life, where I come from that sort of lifestyle. My mother's an architect, my father's an engineer. And so both of them have the vision,
right.
But one of them is much better at managing. Yeah, and so they look at it a little differently. And my grandmother is an artist. And so I've always been in love with art and seeing beauty in things. And I've obviously wanted to be on the artistic side the majority of the time, but I also realized where my strengths were. And so I utilized those strengths to get to me where I am now. And now I'm trying to focus back more onto that left brain to kind of get the creatives rolling again. But you have that here. So if you can tap into the entrepreneurial program at Nunez, what my hope and dream is to kind of grab some of the creatives that are coming in from the outside or finding ones that are here and pairing them together and saying, all right, let's see what you guys can end up doing.
Make some magic.
Yeah, man. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what my goal is here. I've built a facility. I need more creatives around me, right? They're going to be the ones that are going to fill my space. So go be successful. And how is it I can help you become successful? So let's go do that so that we become a community of hopefully creatives. That's what I vision as a place of digital creatives. In fact, we can jump into that. The Ford plant that's right down the way.
Right.
And I went to Sydney, gosh, how long has it been now? It's been a year and a half. And we started talking about the facility, and the facility was mostly we were using it for post-production storage. So movies would get done. They would need to fold their sets up. Right. They would need to, store away wardrobe and costumes. And we're like, all right, well, we'll go give you a space, a relatively, inexpensive space to store your stuff for 6 to 8 months. And so it was a good business model. And Sydney just we were chatting one day, and he was like, well, what would you see if the ranch were to sort of take over a bit of this space? How do you vision that? And so I sat back and I took my time on it, and I brought him a full-fledged plan on how I would redesign the Ford plant. So it's a 225,000 square foot facility. It's, one of the biggest buildings in this area, and it sits on 27 acres of land. And I was like, Sydney, this is a blank canvas. This is there's a real opportunity here. And so as I laid it out to him, my vision was not only to take the core competency of our business, which is film and television, but bring in musicians, bring in gaming, bring in game developers, bring in AI and VR and tech, and have them all come into one place.
Yeah. Because
guess what? All of them want to be around each other. They feed off of each other. They utilize the same type of talent from each other. And so if you have that going on, you have an incubator of potential content creation.
Right.
And so we called it a content creation hub, or an assembly place for creative minds. And so that's the vision now that we're pushing through and really trying to potentially make that space into what it is that we see the future of content creation to be.
Right.
And so that's the other reason why I'm trying to build up Neutral Ground Films so much, is so that I can become the best and biggest producer that we can have in this area, to then help lead the potential of incubating that space best as possible, to then hopefully envelop more small businesses of content creators around us, that maybe this area will then become a tech mecca or a content mecca.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's what Cupertino and San Francisco and all those places. Why can't it be here? Why can't it be here?
Why can't it? You have your residential living cost is cheaper here. It's much safer here. Through the COVID-19 that you have right now, you're a lot more spread out.
Right.
There's a lot more. I think there's a lot of opportunity here in this area, and I think people have been seeing that for a while, especially since I've been here. That's been a really great talk and a good motivation and a good message that this parish has been doing, is really showcasing their assets, and I think they're doing a great job of it. And it's on the brink. I think something's going to happen here real soon where you're going to see some big movement. So. Cool. And thanks to you guys here, at this office, you guys are doing a great job too. So
hey, we love this office.
Okay.
I know when I first came in,
I didn't mean you staying in our offices. I meant you all in the work that you're doing. But we're glad to have you in our offices.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's a great environment. Yeah, that's all I've got. Is there anything you would like to share with the St. Bernard or greater New Orleans community?
Well, we'll just be on the lookout. We have a couple things coming out pretty soon. We'll have the Ranch 2.0, which is going to be a full enveloping of our new website, all of our messaging, all of our new social media content. Neutral Ground Films will also have a revamp. That probably won't come till this fall, though. We'll have a rebranding, and we'll start pushing a lot of the content that we've been creating through there. And then also we're going to announce the fact that we've been working on developing a film marketing company. Because we know and have seen the changing times and what's happening in distribution of content, and it all starts with marketing. How is it that people are going to know about your product? How are you going to draw your audience? And that's one of the biggest things we've seen with independent filmmakers is that, they have the resources and assets and the wherewithal to get the project done. But once they have it done, where does it go?
Right.
Does it go just to a film festival? Maybe it dies there.
It dies
how
after
can
the fact? When you
how can you get it out there? Well, guess what? That needs to start from day one.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to teach and trying to offer potential filmmakers as a way that we can start building another side of our business. And it's tax credit write-off, by the way, so it becomes an opportunity for bigger films too, up to $1 million in marketing spend. So we have dreams of maybe in the next 5 years having a full-fledged marketing company here in Chalmette, Louisiana, that we can hopefully, like I said, continue driving these content creators to larger audiences, right?
Right.